Hi, this is Rob Anspach, and I'm with a very unique um, uh, person, if we can call her a person. I think we can call her a person. She's an author. She's also a publisher, and but this interview is going to be a little different because I think what we're going to do is talk about one of her books, and it's all about cyberbullying, and it's society today with the internet, with social media, with texting, with emails. Cyberbullying is one of those subjects that I think really hit hard with some people. And Amanda is just that unique person to want to write it and get that story out there. So welcome, Amanda. And if I miss something, please jump in and just say, hey, you know what? That's not right.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you having me. So where would you like to start? With how, what got me into writing Greenlee, or?
Yeah, let's talk about, because, before you had Greenlee, you were basically writing about what, fairies and alligators, and so why the transition into Greenlee project?
Well, the fairy books, because a lot of people always ask me, well, what took you down the road of the fairy books? The Mischief in the Mushroom Patch, and A Fairy Match in the Mushroom Patch. I'm actually working on the third one of that series. And it wasn't so much that I just absolutely loved, fairies in and of themselves. It was that my mother did. And I was very close with my mom. I feel like I honestly lost her way too early. She died very young, especially to me. I felt like it was too young. And she loved fairies. She collected them. We grew up in England, and in England, fairies are very mystical, magical, and they're just a very huge part of the culture. And I always remember her telling me fairy stories. And as a child, I grew up with them all over the house because she actually collected them. So they were always there. And I can tell you right now that the dogs are about to go off because I work from home and the UPS guy just pulled up and I have a delivery coming, so I know that it's going to go crazy. But she collected fairies. She loved them. And one day she didn't feel very well. And she was like, I don't feel good. I'm going to go to the doctor. And when she went to the doctor that day, they told her, you're going to die. Get your affairs in order. And it was so shocking to me. And she was gone literally 3 months later. But because of that, I wrote her a fairy story. And that fairy story was Mischief in the Mushroom Patch. And she didn't get to see it in print. She got to read the first 7 chapters. I told her the ending, and I literally put it up. I couldn't finish it while she was alive because I just couldn't get it done in time. So you want to hold off on that, and I'll take care of that? Give me a second. We can actually start that over if you want.
No, that's okay. And this is the joy of Google Hangout. It's a surprise to everybody when things happen. We do these live, and I try not to edit them. I have a dog. I work from home. Amanda works from home. So, this is just how it is.
I can't leave books out in the rain, books in the room. But I did read her the book. I read her the ending, and she passed. I put that book up for a year, and it was almost a year to the anniversary of her death, and I pulled it out, and I sent that book off. And that was the book that put me on the path of being an author. So it changed from being a writer to suddenly being the author, because she made me promise that I would finish those stories for my kids. And it definitely changed my role. I'd always loved writing, but I had no idea that I was going to be an author. And it did. It changed the path that I was on. And that particular book ended up helping a lot of people. I just didn't realize it at the time because it was my mother's book. And it's become a very personal book to me because of that, because it was so important to my mom. And then because that book ended up triggering so many good things. When I wrote the second book, I got an email from a lady, and I know I've told this story before, from a lady I had no idea who she was, didn't know her from Adam, And she had bought the Mischief book, which was very important to me because it was my mother's book, and sent me an email and said, I loved this book. I loved everything, but I love this book. I love the world you created. I was wondering if you could create a character that had a disability, because my daughter would have loved this book. And that email in and of itself just touched me in such a way that it took me a minute to respond to that email. But when I did, I told this lady, if you give me just a minute to think, I might be able to do that. Because I had to be respectful of this lady, because I didn't know her. I had to be respectful of the daughter that she had lost. And I had to be respectful of my mom's memory. But I ended up creating a little character by the name of Pearl, who couldn't fly. You know, she's in this little wheelchair. And I put her in the mushroom patch, and she's forever there. And I sent that lady a sample chapter, and I said, if you agree with this, if you, you know, are okay with this little character here, I'll continue with this story. And she loved this little character. So that little fairy has now forever been a part of this series. But when we launched that second book at Barnes & Noble, that lady came to the store. And this time I knew who she was, because she was very emotional, and she had brought pictures of her daughter with her that day. And she bought a ton of the books. And at that time I was with my other publisher, and those books were very expensive. They were hardcover and paperback at the same time, but they were very expensive. And she had bought a ton of them, and I was signing them. And I said, who are you gonna give all these books to? And she said, I'm gonna donate them to the Scottish Rite Hospital, because my daughter had 53 surgeries there before she died. I was just so taken back by that. So I ended up telling her, I'm going with you. And we donated, my publisher donated hundreds of books, and Barnes & Noble's donated books, and Build-A-Bear donated bears and wheelchairs. And we went and spent all day with the children at the Scottish Rite through that little character. And then after that, we ended up going to her daughter's, who had passed, her daughter's favorite camp, which was the Texas Lions camp, which is for kids with disabilities, and they pay for all their disabilities to spend the week, you know, at this particular camp. And we spent all weekend with those kids, and the leaders that were there, they said, you know, we've never had authors come here before, because the kids are, you know, they're in wheelchairs and they have all these disabilities, but their minds are so intact and so sharp and creative that people overlook them because they have all these disabilities. So we ended up doing so much through these little characters that I just had no idea that when I had written that story, that so much would take place. So they're very important characters to me. But anyway, that's how the fairies came about. I had no idea that that particular book would change my life so much, but it did. So that book's very important to me. But then when I got into the Gator book, that was just a little book I put out while I was finishing my other books. The Ghost book, I love the Ghost book. But the Greenlee book is important for another reason. Obviously, the cyberbullying is huge. The Amanda Todd case, I don't know if you're familiar with that. I originally heard about the Amanda Todd case when I saw a clip, an actual YouTube video of her suicide notes. And it was so disturbing to me that it literally haunted me. I mean, just was so shocking to me. It just wouldn't leave my mind. And then on top of that, when I started noticing that these kids were sending texts and having these arguments over phones, and they were like, oh, I hate you today, I love you tomorrow, or you're horrible today, or, I mean, they just didn't comprehend that once they sent these messages, the damage that they were doing, whether they loved each other in 5 minutes, the damage was done. And it just started to compile and bother me, because my kids were doing the same things, and I couldn't get the message across to them. Look, you might be friends today, but what you said yesterday, that damage is done. It's out there, and kids are using it against you, and you're getting in trouble, and we're getting parent phone calls, and you just don't realize the impact of the words. And so I started to have this idea about the Greenlee Project, and not just how the words affect the person that's being bullied or the bullier, but how really great kids, the kids that we're raising, and we think that we're doing the right thing, and we think that we're teaching them the right lessons, can suddenly get caught up in the actual bullying process without even realizing it, because we're putting tools in their hands that they're not even equipped to use. They have no idea how to use these tools. They think they do because they think they know everything, but they're just not really mature enough to handle them. And I'm not saying, because one parent said, well, what are you suggesting? We take all their tools away? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that our kids really are a lot more vulnerable than we think they are, because they have access to stuff that, even though we think that we're checking their data or checking their phones, there are apps and links out there that we can't even get to because parents don't have access to them, and we don't have access to them on their data plans and phones and things like that, even though we're trying to check them, we don't have access to them. But in addition to that, I had seen a news report where one of the certain kids were being held accountable for something, and a student had hung himself, which was shocking and horrible in and of itself, of course. But what struck me as really disturbing was that the child that was being punished, the judge and everyone in the courtroom was saying, part of the reason that I'm disciplining you as hard as I am is because you're not showing enough remorse. And the courtroom was really excited about that, because they felt like the judge had done a really great job. She was punishing this child for not showing enough remorse. And I remember thinking to myself, how tragic. This kid is a kid. This kid has absolutely no idea of the impact of what they've done. You know, if they were 18, 21 years old, they would realize, oh my gosh, what I did caused the effect and caused this child to kill themselves. But at 14 years old, they're thinking, well, how stupid, why did that kid kill themselves? I didn't really mean it, because I really sent the text. I didn't mean it. They comprehend the damage of what they've done, because they're really 14 years old, they're kids. So as a society, we're like accepting, okay, great, we punished them, we've ruined everybody's lives, and we think that's good because we punished this child accordingly because this other child killed themselves. And I just thought, what have we done? What have we done as a society and as parents that we think that's okay? Instead of saying, what is going on that 14-year-old kids are being punished and we're doing all of this because we won't take responsibility, and saying kids shouldn't have access to all of that. They shouldn't be able to use these phones as freely as they are. And it's going to happen, but they're not mature enough to understand what they're doing. They're not mature enough. And so punish them as adults over words they're sending. It just doesn't make sense. Because they're not mature enough to understand what they're doing. At 18, they'll understand.
And I find that, you know, the short texting that they're doing, it doesn't have the connotation that you would have if you wrote them an actual letter. You know, back in, you know, when we were kids, if you wanted to express yourself, you would write a letter, whether it be a love letter or a thank you letter or what kind of letter. Kids have lost the ability to communicate through writing, and now they're doing these short, you know, emoticons or emojis or whatever they're called, and they lose that meaning, and battles and wars are being fought now over miscommunication of a text.
They're just completely desensitized, and they don't know how to communicate, because they were actually having an actual conversation, and they could hear in somebody's voice how they were actually feeling or what their emotions really were. Those words, they wouldn't say those things. If they could see what somebody actually felt, or if they were really upset, they wouldn't say half the things they were saying while they're hiding behind the phone or behind a computer screen. And when you get into a mode and you put kids together, they get into that group gang type mentality, and they all hang out together and they all become very vicious, and it's awful. And one of the other reasons that I felt like the Green League Project was so important is because some of our greatest kids that are in church every week, and they're great students and they're fantastic athletes, they get pulled into this just as quickly and just as easily. It's not just the bad kids, it's great kids, but the damage is done when they're part of it. I mean, you send out that stuff and you become part of that mentality. it affects everybody. So it doesn't just affect the person that's a bully. It affects the bully, the person that's acting as the bully. It affects the family, the friends, the community. It affects everybody, and anybody can become the bullier. It can happen that quickly. And what was disturbing to me, I mean, it took me a year and a half to write Greenlee, and I spent time, you know, in high schools, in cafeterias, and football games, and around teams, and talking to coaches and talking to teachers, and really spending time with people. And what was disturbing, and especially making sure that it was clean enough for tweens and teens. But what was disturbing was having people that read a lot of YA turn around and say, well, you didn't spend time with teens. I live with teens, and I have teens over here all the time, and I spent all that time with, you know, middle schools and high schools. Because if you did, you would have put sex in there and cursing and this, because that's what teens do. And that's what, so today, in today's mentality, they're still thinking that if you're going to find a book that appeals to kids, you have to put all that in there. So you can't even keep your material clean anymore. I felt like that was disturbing in and of itself. But yeah, it's a scary, scary thing. And I wanted to get the point across that anybody's kid can get caught up in that. It can happen very quickly. And it's not just sending the text, it's what happens after that, the aftermath. And it's real, and it's scary. And like I said, somebody said, well, what are you supposed to do, take all the phones away? No, but you do need to be very aware of, you think you're monitoring your kid's phone, but you can't possibly see what they're doing because you don't have access to it. Even if you check their data, you don't see what they're doing. It's impossible, because the kids that I actually interviewed all the time, they were like, as soon as a parent sees this app, it's gone and another one's there. You don't have access to it. It's scary, very scary.
What were some of the apps that the kids were using that, I mean, was it texting? Was it social media? Was it Snapchat?
Definitely social media. And there were so many of them that, I mean, there were kind of like not just the Facebook, but the texting apps where they could text without the parents seeing the data that they were texting. So it was free texting apps and free kind of like Snapchat apps that they had, all different kinds. There were so many different names. But as soon as it got out there where everybody started knowing what they were down and another one was up. But they even had them up in the schools, and as soon as the schools started to get aware, they were pulled down and they were back up, under different names. So it's like a constant thing. It's out there and it's available, and they could post stuff, you know, without using their real names, and say anything they wanted about people, about any kid in the school at any time. And it could be, oh, you're ugly, you are, I mean, worse than that. I mean, just, you know, you're fat, you should go kill yourself, you need to die, everybody hates you, this is what people are saying. And everyone could go in and comment on that. And then as soon as a teacher or a parent got word of it, it was down, another one was up. And this stuff is passed around. And I mean, like, for example, the YouTube thing that's going on right now, the craze that was there for a while and is probably still there. I was watching the kids showing the YouTube videos where it was funny to watch people setting people up so they could beat the snot out of them, whether it was hitting them over the head with a shovel or a brick or a wood board or setting them on fire, and the hits that these kids were getting. And it got to where I was watching kids and they were just absolutely laughing. I mean, hysterically, because one girl, the one that they were showing me specifically, just absolutely got the snot kicked out of her with a shovel, and she almost died. And their response was, well, she was stupid enough to show up. I was so shocked. You're kidding me. That's your response? She was stupid enough to show up? And they're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. They have no sensitivity anymore at all. It doesn't bother them because it's their entertainment. It's what they think is funny. I find that so disturbing. Absolutely disturbing. And the fact that these kids are doing it under the cover of doing everything else right, and their parents pretend that they're not, that their kids aren't watching it, is even scarier to me. Because we don't live in a bad community, but it's still going on. You know, and that's what's terrifying, is that they kind of just turn the other way and pretend it's not going on here. And they kind of put it under the mat and pretend it's in somebody else's neighborhood, somebody else's backyard. And I find that the scariest. I find it terrifying.
I'm a big proponent of businesses using social media to get their word out, to build trust the problem is the media is using it to desensitize our children, and they're seeing horrors, they're seeing wars, they're seeing all this bad stuff, terrorism and drugs, and then they start going out and filming it themselves, and then they think it's funny and they're putting it out there, and it's just driving. These kids they have no idea what's going on. They're they have no idea what's right or wrong. They just think it's funny, and they don't care if it hurts somebody or not. And I go into these schools, and they actually have signs on there. It says, "Do not take your cell phones in the bathroom." Do not take pictures of people in the bathroom. I'm like, really? I have to be told that? I mean, that should be common sense. But they
Right.
do it.
It's scary. And I wouldn't sit here and say that my kids haven't been a part of something, because I'm not stupid enough to think that my kids wouldn't jump into something, but they've been obviously told, you better not be a part of that. There will be consequences to that. I just think it's sad that any kid would be involved in that, especially when they know these are the consequences and this is the damage and this is what could happen. And when you put that out there, it's out there forever. It's just a very scary thing. And so, I mean, when I was writing the Greenlee Project, there were times I'd have to leave my desk. It was so disturbing, so upsetting, some of the scenes. And just knowing that these kids today, I mean, they're surrounded by it, they're involved in it. They think they're invincible. They think it could never happen to them. They think it's funny when it's happening to somebody else. It's just a different world, and it's very scary. Obviously back when we were growing up, and of course it's completely different now, and everyone will say, well, it's not the environment kids live in, and it's completely different. Of course it's completely different. But, if you weren't, arguing it out or fighting it out, I mean, the rule was if there were no broken bones, no blood, we didn't want to hear about it, and everyone got along, and if you didn't, you figured it out and you went on your business. But now we got, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds killing themselves because someone sent a text around that said, everybody hates you or you're ugly. And these kids are actually thinking, this is so horrible, my life is ruined because of that, I'm gonna go kill myself. And I just think that's awful that in today's world, they think that poorly, or they have such low self-esteem, or something else is going on and nobody knows about it, that's the very last thing that just puts them over the edge. That's the last thing they could take, and their life's over that. I just think that's terrifying in today's world, because I'm 11 years old.
How have people responded to your book? I mean, it's got to change lives.
It's been interesting, because in today's world, the book world, it's a turbulent industry. But the people that have read it have always come back and said, I had no idea this book was like this. And this is believe it or not, they'll say there's an inspirational message in this book. This is not what we expected, and we love this book. It won the Mom's Choice Gold Award, so I was thrilled about that, especially because I kept it clean. I kept the material clean. And I did have one person say, well, a teen wouldn't read this because there's no sex and there's no curse words and there's no violence and this and that. But after it won the Mom's Gold Choice Award, and then the people that come back and say, this is inspirational and this is what the kids need to read, it was rewarding to hear that, knowing, because I didn't believe what that person said. I was like, well, I don't believe that you're reading the right books, and clearly I don't agree with you, because I know where I spent my time researching, and I live with teens, and so you're entitled to your opinion. I think your opinion's wrong. And then the kids that do read it, they come back and they say, I loved your book. So I do believe that the message is there, and the response is, it's good. It's like anything else, it's getting the word out. But the people that do read it, they like it. And so, I'll always, I give that book away like you wouldn't believe. I mean, to me, if it's just in the hands of the kids and they're reading it and they get something back, that's all that's important to me. So I give it away. But the librarians that read it, they love it. I get messages from them. They're like, it's clean. We love it. The message is there. So that's good. And I think there's a message there. And like I said, it's for the teens and the tweens, and it's such a hard age to write for. I don't like that it has to be categorized as YA, and that's such a hard category, because I think there's a huge difference between a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old. I think that's a vast, age group difference there, mentality-wise. But that's the category they put it in. So I tried to keep it clean for the 12, 13, 14-year-olds because I think that's where you hit them the earliest, especially in today's world. But yeah, they're liking it, so that's good. And with the company, Progressive, we're constantly building and working on wider distribution for all titles. So it's the fact that we own the company, we can keep it out there and keep that message going. So I'm hopeful that it will just continue to trickle out there with what we're doing.
Let's talk about Progressive, because you weren't always a publisher. You had used publishers in the past, for your own books, and then you transitioned to be a publisher. How did that? What was the inspiration behind that? Because it's not always something that an author thinks about.
Right. That's a great question. Well, I was with another publisher back in 2009, and they had 3 of my titles, and they were a big publisher. I think they had over 4,000 authors, and I was one of them. I can honestly say now, looking back, without question, they definitely taught me how to be an author, and that is the truth, because what we are finding now, and our label consists of many talented authors, I think talented writers first and foremost, talented authors, but I think what our strongest assets are our strongest authors that have been in the field the longest. You can be a writer for 20 years, but being an author in this industry, the more experience you have is a more valuable asset to us. And I say that sincerely because the industry is that different in today's world. So the green authors are, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, I'm just saying they're the ones that have just a kind of a, oh my goodness, this is not what I expected moment, even though we try to tell them you just don't understand what it's like. But my other publisher, I can honestly say without question, they taught me how to be an author. And I have great appreciation for that. I can also say that being on this side of the fence, that now I feel for them. I do. I've learned so much, and I understand that what they were doing, I mean, some of it, the authors, they just don't understand. They just don't understand what it's like being on this side of the fence. And they do a lot of foreign rights and different sales and that kind of thing, and we're just not big enough to do any of that. But the reason I left was being with those big publishers, or any big publisher in today's market. The industry as a whole, they take so much from writers. They just do. That's the nature of the game, and it has to be done. And when I left, the reason I left is I felt like as a writer, we entertain the world. We just do. Writers entertain the world. Whether you're writing the newspaper articles, or you're writing the movie scripts or the screenplays, you're a writer. You're contributing to the entertainment of everything. And whether people realize it or not, the writers are behind everything that touches entertainment. And whether it's a jingle, it doesn't matter. The writers are touching it. And yet they give up the most. They absolutely 100% give up the most. And knowing as a writer that we seriously, it is blood, sweat, and tears. It is hours and hours and hours and years and years and years. And it's work, it's hard work, and it's passion and soul, and we're the hardest people on ourselves, and it's a labor of love, and we're going to do it whether somebody buys it, and we're going to do it 100 times over, and it's protecting that. And so when I pulled my titles, it was to be able to create and to write and to have ownership of that, and to build a label that gave back to the writers and the authors. And that was the intent, and that was still in the intent. Now that said, there are some things that we have learned going into this. We were only 3 years old now. This is the 3rd year going in, that we realized going in that we've changed. Because the bottom line is we want to protect our authors, we want to protect our voices, we want to protect the work that we create, we want to give the writers back the majority of what they're getting in royalties and things like that. But the bottom line is learning what we've learned and doing what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. you have to put back into the business. You have to still run a business. So there have things that we've done and we've changed, and we are taking back ownership off of the protection of the label that we're building, because the market now is so incredibly saturated that we have to, as a small press and independent publisher, we have to do it 100 times better than, for lack of better words, and I don't mean to sound insulting, and I don't mean to sound like we're trying to be better than the people that are doing it out there, but we have to elevate what we're doing. We have to do it better than just people out there loading garbage and people out there just trying to jump into this market. We have to be 100 times better than that, because what we're doing, and our goal has never changed. We are always going to want distribution. We're always going to want to do things that we know have to be done to get our work out there in what we know needs to be done for our brick and mortars and for our vendors, and to carry the POs, which are the things that we're already doing, the things that have to be done. So we've taken some things away from our authors. We've taken that we know will protect the label as a whole. We don't solicit authors, we never have, and we still can't keep up with submissions, but we don't load on certain presses, and we only load on others, and we only all the work has to be professionally edited, and we use nice designers, and we use contractors for formatting, and we are, always going to want wider distribution. So we have, we're submitting for Advantage programs, which is warehousing through Amazon, and that's not .com. It's completely different, and we can fill POs, and we're authorized vendors for Fort Worth School District, and we fill POs for TCU University, and we just do things completely different. And to do that, we now have to take something back. So, before we were just like, you get 100% back, and now we can't. We're like, you have to put back in order for us to be able to invest in what we're doing and put back into the company and promote and give you something back. We have to invest in that, and so you have to give something up. So our authors still get higher royalties than they would anywhere else, but they have to put back into the company. Everybody's got to put back. And so we're just doing things at a higher level than we were. We're still protecting our authors. We're still giving back more than they would get anywhere else. And we're still providing stuff that they couldn't get on their own, Lexile scoring and different print options and professional contractors and things of that nature. But our goal will always be the wider distribution and an independent distributor. And to do that, we've had to really tighten the reins, really make sure that our content is really good, and really make sure that we've diversified the label. We can't be too concentrated in one area, and we've got really solid, great award winners, and like I said, experienced authors, not just green authors that are with other publishers, but then they bring their new stuff to us. And it's exciting because they offer a lot of expertise in the industry as a whole. So we want to go to the large trade shows. We want to keep going to ALA, and we want to keep going to TLA. And if I know enough to know that when I don't know something, I go ask the experts, and they tell me and they share their information. And I don't ever say, okay, this is all we're doing because this is all I know. Oh, I make sure I go ask. And if they tell me this has to be done, it's got to be done. I don't sit there and say, okay, we're not doing it because we're only going to do it this way. If they tell me you have to use, this type of ISBN, and you need to make sure that most of your sales are going through a POS, and they have to be recorded through BookScan and Nielsen, that's what's got to be done. I'm not a big opponent of direct selling, but if that's their niche and that's what they want to do, that's their business. But I know that until we get most of those sales through a POS and it's captured, and the people I need to see those sales being recorded, that stuff's important. And some of our authors that are really green, they don't get that yet. They just want to keep selling really fast at these little shows and stuff like that. But we need sales to be captured. They need to see those increases. And so it's things like that we try to share that information. This stuff's important. This is what we have to do for a label to keep growing. And the people that we need to see those sales increase, it's these people over here. And if you're just direct selling here, those sales don't count. They don't count. And so those things aren't important to me as a publisher for what we need to do. And so the green authors, they're just not learning that stuff yet. They're just not being introduced to that. And it's not that I want to take that away from them. If they love that, they just have to understand that that's not always going to help in the great big picture of what we're trying to do. It helps build their platform if somebody else goes and tells somebody about their book, and then they buy it through a POS system of some sort. But that's why I started the label. I wanted to be able to give back more, but as we've learned and we've grown, there's just stuff that has to be done that we're doing, things that it's mandatory. And so as we learn those things, we just make it a mandatory policy, and we uphold it. And if people don't want to be a part of that, they're welcome to leave. But there are things that we put in place that we're not going to change for those reasons. It's for the good of the whole label.
You know, has social media helped or hindered the sales of books?
I think without question it helps. It's just doing it consistently. It's making sure we have a person now in place that will handle that for us on a regular basis, and making sure that it's done very consistently and on a regular basis. Well, a couple of times a day in different places on a regular basis is important, and spreading it out and not just shoving your books down people's throats. It's being interesting and keeping, new people following you and getting new readers and things like that. So I think it's very important. The person that we have now helping us that will be handling that, it's really neat because she's very quirky and she's very young and she's very interested in the field. And so I think it's putting the right people in the right places. And I'm very, very good about taking my time. Like I've had my eye on a couple of different people for different things, and they weren't quite the fit. So I'd rather pass than just rush into bringing people in and assigning them different tasks when they're not the right people. We have way too much vested. I mean, when me and my partner started this business, my mom taught me a long time ago. She was an entrepreneur, she was a business owner, and she said, Amanda, when you do this, whenever you do whatever you're doing, 5 years, give yourself 5 years and don't do this and do this and do that. And so we've done that, and it has allowed this company to stay and pay for itself and keep money in the bank and keep growing. And so we have very, very specific things in place, and we want to make sure that people that we bring in are in it for the long haul and good at what they're doing. And so I didn't just want to put people in that, so yeah, I'll add something today, or I'll do this, I'll do that. I wanted to bring somebody in that was very quirky and smart and quick. And so she'll be joining us very shortly. She's just finishing up her finals and stuff. And but yeah, she's a writer, and she's very interested in the field and wants to do this long term. So I'm excited about her being on board full time. So yeah, I'm excited about that. But yeah, she'll be handling all the different, like the Instagram and the Twitter and the Facebook and all that. Because right now I'm trying to do a lot of different things. But my work has suffered, my actual personal writing, not suffered in the quality, I don't believe, but being able to write daily and promote daily my personal stuff has definitely had to take a back seat, because I focused so much on progressive, but it had to be done. And when you have ownership of that, you don't have a choice. So it's like sacrifice now for the big picture later. And so that's what I did.
You mentioned, being the right fit. Is there authors that aren't the right fit for progressive? I mean, do you look for a certain type of author?
Yes, without question. Without question. I mean, we've had a couple of people that have had some really, really, really good work. Good work. I'm sure they'd be great anywhere else. But, if you're not in the right mindset, this industry is volatile. It just is. It's up and down. And my biggest fear as an author and as a publisher, but specifically as an author, in today's world, it's really great if you're a writer. You can load a book very easily. But in today's world, it's horrible if you're a writer, because you can load a book very easily. It's going to be incredibly saturated, and it's already bad. But the fact that you can just load up on Nook now, Nook, you can just load up. As soon as they did that, I knew immediately, oh my goodness, it's going to be a million times worse. It tells me that those relationships that are intact with the distributors, the independent distributors, and people are often confused by distributors. They think that's your Amazons, and they think that's your, your .com, Barnes and Nobles, and that's not what a distributor is. That's not what I'm referring to. But those relationships that are intact with your independent distributors and your brick and mortar stores and your wholesalers, those people, they're going to buckle down even more, because those relationships are strong and they're secure. and they know who they're dealing with. And now that everything else is saturated and people are just loading cheaply and as fast and quickly as they can, they're going to buckle down even more. There's no reason for them to step out. And it terrifies me. It absolutely terrifies me. So if you have someone in there that comes in, it doesn't matter how good their work is, if they just expect all of a sudden, oh, I should go out there and I should be a bestseller, and you as a tiny press should represent me, you should do this, this, and this, it can upset everything. It can upset the entire apple cart, because first and foremost, we're not taking enough from you. We're not taking anything, and your contract covers what we produce. So if we're not taking anything and you're not a big enough name to sell anything, how are we supposed to do that all for you? How do we do that? You're not bankable. You can't cover what you produce. You can't bring anything to the bank. How do we do that for you? You're not even willing to do it for yourself, and you don't know how, and you run off 90 to nothing, and you're just, it's a disaster. And so I've pulled contracts and terminated people because it's not a good fit. And that's why we don't solicit authors ever. I will never solicit an author, and I will never ask an author to stay. But I will ask them to leave, because if you don't understand the dynamics of how this industry works, and you don't work together, you won't get anywhere. And Amazon and things like that, it's such, it can be very deceiving. Those numbers can be very deceiving, and people don't understand, especially green authors, they don't understand how certain things work, bestseller lists and things like that. It's just not all what people think it is. And once you have an understanding of what that really is, then you don't even look at that anymore. You don't look, because it's more about how popular you are in your audience and what people think you can sell because of that, and pre-sales, and they just don't understand. So somebody that doesn't understand the industry and is running off green and 90 to nothing, and it's too hard to deal with, because then they have unrealistic expectations, and they're not patient, right, and they don't understand what it's going to take. And just slow and steady and doing everything right, it will pay off. Building that platform and getting the right contacts into place. We put, 300 books into 88 elementary schools, because the book's great, but once again, vendors don't buy from authors. They just don't. They buy from a publisher. They buy from someone who's going to carry that note for 90 days. And authors can't do that. We're doing that. We'll finance that. We'll carry that for the right author. We're not going to do that for someone that's flying off by their seat of the pants going crazy. So yeah, we'll take the risk. We'll carry that, but it's got to be the right deal. And that's the same with stores. Stores don't want to buy an author's book. They want to buy terms. They want to buy a book that's selling. They want to buy what is the market moving, who's interested in what story. And then they're a business. I don't want to buy it if it's not selling. So I want to pay for it 90 days later. And if it doesn't sell, I want to send it back. So yeah, we'll carry that kind of term if the author's the right author, and if the book is moving, if there's interest there. So we're doing stuff like that.
The author themselves needs to put a little bit of effort into it.
Exactly.
It's just not all just the publisher's concern, although, the publisher should be doing something, but the author themselves should be making videos or promoting themselves on social media, or going out and meeting people, doing book signings, doing whatever. I hate book signings. I think that it's just the worst way to do it. But, some people love it, and they just, that's how they're able to sell more books, because they're, meet and greet, but I find that the author, they write the book, they sit back and they say, you do all the work. That's not how it works.
It's not, and especially in today's world. I'm like you. I'm not overly crazy about a book signing unless it's, well publicized or there's interest there, because it's time consuming, and it can be awful unless you're willing to interact, unless people are not nervous and they'll come up and talk to you. But if you're just going there and you're not willing to talk to anyone, you're just wasting everybody's time. And so, yeah, if I'm going to go to a signing, I want it to be well organized. I want to be able to visit and talk and go to a time of day when the kids are going to be there or whatever. I don't just want to I just don't want to take up everybody's time and have it be an annoyance. I hate that feeling. But I'm with you. I mean, authors have to do their part. Even with big publishers today, people are so confused. They think if I'm with a big publisher, they're going to do everything and I'm going to be promoted and I'm going to be on a bookshelf. And that tells me immediately they don't have any idea how this industry works. I mean, some of your best publishing houses, I think Random House will always be, to me, the best of the best of the best. I just love them. I don't know why. It's just that thing in my head. And I like Simon & Schuster. I mean, there's some great houses out there, but for me, that's just stuck in my head. But even those houses, their list is huge. It's absolutely huge. You're not going to find every one of their titles on the shelf. It doesn't work that way. Just because you're signed by them doesn't mean you're going to be on a bookshelf. It's just not how the business works. And the problem is authors don't understand how the business works. That space is valuable shelf space. It's bought and paid for, and you'll get a shot on there. You don't sell, you're off. And they don't understand. They think, well, if I'm with a big publisher, they're going to do it for me. They're going to sell me. They're going to make me famous. And that right there tells me you have no idea of the industry you're in. And so any author that we consider bringing on without question, the first thing I ask them is, why on earth do you write? Why would you want to go down this path? And if you dare tell me you want to be famous, I'm not interested, and I don't care how much I love your book. I'm not interested in it because you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and you will be frustrated and aggravated and burn out, and you'll burn up your resources, and there's just no point. It's not what it's about. You better tell me you love this journey. You better tell me you love your book, and you better tell me you have a day job, because I'm not interested. It's sad. It's just sad because they just don't have an idea. They just don't have an idea of what they're doing, and it's exhausting trying to explain it. Now especially when we're working this hard.
You have one author right now that you're working with that was featured on the BBC.
I love her. Emma Gingerich. She is one of my favorite little authors. I admire her strength and her tenacity, and I admire the young woman that she has become. I always call her my little runaway Amish, and she always laughs at me when I call her that. But I always see her as this little fragile girl, and she always says, "I'm runaway Amish, so how could I possibly be fragile?" And I'm like, "You're absolutely right." She is a wonderful young lady, a wonderful speaker, wonderful author. And yeah, she has a fantastic memoir, and she's actually working on the second one. And she was in one of the BBC specials. They did a piece on articles from home, and there were 5 authors in that, and they took samples of stuff that they left their country or their place of home with. And she had taken her dress, and it was the one thing that had reminded her of what she left. But she actually, at 18 years old, left her life, her community, her life, her home, because she just knew with everything inside of her that it wasn't what she was supposed to be doing for the rest of her life. And I just think she's such an amazing young lady. And so I stay in touch with her very regular. She lives very close to me. And I think she's an inspiration for all young women. And I read her book when it came in, and then I read it as her friend and as a woman, and it was completely different after I read it, after I knew her. I mean, because I read it obviously from a publisher's perspective, and I was like, yes, this is going to sell. This is a book that needs to be told. It's a story that needs to be told. And then once I knew her and I read it, it was just tragic and wonderful, and it's a story that will help a lot of young women. But yeah, absolutely. I just think she's adorable. And I think the piece on BBC was lovely.
Now, how do people get a hold of Progressive or yourself to either order books or eventually, if they're an author, be considered by Progressive?
You can go to our website, which is Progressive Rising. What is it? I can never tell. It's progressiverisingphoenix.com. That's it. It's progressiverisingphoenix.com. And it has all of our authors and our books, and it has a submission or contact us form on there, and it gives you all the submission guidelines and things of that nature and what we're doing. And right now like I said, we offer 3 different print options, and we do, obviously paperback, hardcover, ebooks. We attend all the large trade shows as best we can. We're going to be going to TLA next year. We went to ALA last year. We're doing the Advantage program now with Amazon. We're getting all our paperwork and gear for that. We are approved vendor for Fort Worth ISD, which was great. And we did a nice book for TCU. That was awesome. And we have all different genres. So we don't specialize in one different thing. We are expanding, which is great. So, and we do Lexile scoring. I don't know many publishers that do that, but we do Lexile scoring. We do carry POs. And of course we do wholesale discounts. And, just about anything else that we can possibly do to help our authors sell if possible. So yeah, that's what we're working on. And then we'll be at Lexicon in July. So we'll be there.
Now, what's the future of your books? I mean, you have, is there going to be a sequel to Greenlee? Is there going to be more sequels to the Fairy Patch?
I am working on the third installment of the fairy books, and I'm almost done with it. It's behind. It got behind because I put out Greenlee, I put out Gator, and of course I was building, Progressive. So I'm behind on that. So I'm afraid I'm gonna have to drop them all three again and build up my readership on that, which is fine because I think that the fairies are endearing. It's one of those things that they just don't go away. It's a timely piece. It's not gonna go anywhere. And there could be a sequel to Greenlee. It's you could see what was going on after the fact. But I'm going to finish the third piece to the Mischief book, and then I'm going to finish my adult novel. So I'm working on it. I'm excited about finishing it. I'm too far in to turn around, so I'm excited about it.
How many authors do you represent now?
Well, we have nearly 50 titles. So we have over 16, 17 authors that are out there, and about 6 more in the backlist. So we're getting out there.
Is there one author that writes more than another? I mean, how many books do they have?
I think most of them have at least 2 or 3 pieces with us. I'm trying to think who would be our... I think most of them just have 2 or 3 pieces. They keep coming in pretty consistently.
My grandson says hi. Say hi.
He's cute. Hi. Which is good. I think everyone is consistently working on something, which is good. I'd like to get back a little bit more of my writing time, which I'm trying to set out to do. Every time I keep saying that, then something comes out with Progressive that we're constantly working on. So as much as I want to set time out to write, I just keep saying, I just need to do this one more thing for Progressive, this one more thing. But I really, really, really want to set writing time out for myself because I think it's important. And I just have to get these last couple of things set up for Progressive, which will help distribute everybody's books. Like the Amazon, program, I think that's really, really important. The Advantage program, because that's a wholesale warehouse program. So that's really good. I want to get that done. And we're constantly always contacting different distributors. I want to build the second half of the list because I think, half of our list is really, really strong. And the other half, we're still working on. The title quantity is there. And I just want to build some more of the novels and the memoirs. We've got some more biographies coming in. We have our first international biography, which we're really excited about, so we're working on it. So we're excited. From what I see and what I try to put across is, our plan has never changed. The goal has always been the same. We've adjusted the goal according to what we know the industry is wanting. So when the authors don't listen to that, like when they fight us, then as much as I hate to, I start taking that away. Okay, if you're not going to listen, then I'm not going to offer that anymore because I know that this is really important and this is what they're telling us we need to do. So then you're not going to have access to that. And then if they don't like that, then they're welcome to. I would never hold them back, and they're welcome to. Either they can do it by themselves or they can go to another label, whatever it is they feel they need to do. Because having someone on the label that doesn't want to be there, that's not a good fit either. But I know that where we're going and what we need to do and how we need to get there is going to require very specific certain things. So I'm always working on those.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you had the opportunity to share, and utilize this technology for the first time. I know that
I'm not good. I'm not tech savvy. Not tech savvy, Rob.
that's the joy, because here you have, you're teaching writers, not teaching them, but you're showing them the way to get their books, their messages, their their adventures and out there. um but you're learning all this too, you
Yeah,
know
I
so
am.
as you're helping others, you're also embracing the stuff that it's driving them crazy too. But now you can go out there and show them, hey, this is the perfect element. You can go out and interview your authors and put them up there on YouTube, and get them to showcase some of their books, and let them know, hey, you know what, this is what this book's about. This is what I was inspired, and now people can see them. They can see, what they're all about. And, you know, it's not a perfect venue, this Google Hangout. It's still got some quirks, and sometimes unexpected guests come in, like my grandson. But that's what makes it fun, because you get to interact with the author. You get to know them a little bit differently, just like with
Right.
your dogs barking in the back. Hey, now we know you have dogs, and you get deliveries by UPS. But it makes us human, and it makes us, I think, more accessible to people, because they get to know our personalities.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that an author can be, but a lot of them, they're great writers. They're not marketers. They need a publisher to go out there and market their book for them, and that's what they're paying for.
It's very hard, and with us, they're getting technically what their contract covers is their production, setting up their production. Because I know a lot of authors, they don't have that kind of money. They just don't. And so the fact that they don't have that kind of money, their contracts typically cover their production and setup, and they're just not huge, big enough, bankable yet that they can cover what comes in regards to royalties, to put back in enough to where they can have this massive platform. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to get there by any means. And a lot of that is key on wider distribution. That, without question, is key always to any author and any massive book sale. It's the difference between 100 books and 1,000,000 books. It's always going to be that way. And it's getting a lot of the green authors to understand the difference between distributors. And they just, most of them that I deal with that come in, they don't quite understand that difference yet. And it's like I said, they think that if they're with a big publisher, they're on the shelf automatically, because they don't even understand how that works. So teaching them the industry and how it really works and what it's really like is a challenge in and of itself. But once they grasp that, then we can all work together. And it's an interesting industry. I mean, it's constantly changing. It's like I said, it's something that you either love and you're going to do this no matter what, and then how we work getting to where we're going can change everything. But it's exciting. It's exciting. It's just got to be done right, because there's just too much out there right now. There's too many avenues for anybody just to load anything, and it's hard to separate the really good stuff from the bad. And we don't want to be a part of that. We don't want to contribute to the mess. We just don't. And so in order for us not to contribute to the mess, we have to be very, very careful and elevate everything we're doing, which is what we're trying to do.
Now, just one last question. What advice would you give to an up-and-coming author?
An up-and-coming author, without question, never, ever, ever edit your own work. That's my personal advice. If you're going to spend money on anything, spend money on a good editor. I mean, we've spent money on great editors and things have still gone wrong. So things can go wrong with a professional editor, make sure you're spending money there, because too many people touch the files, and it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. You're putting your work out there for the world to see, and they will judge it. And there's so many books out there that, and you know, especially with kids and adults, I mean, it takes them 2 minutes to form an opinion on your work. It takes you years of heart and soul, years, and that's what people don't understand, years of you know, writing these storylines and thinking about these characters and making them believable. And it takes them minutes to form an opinion. So be careful about what you put out there, and try really hard to find a good editor, and invest in that. If you're going to invest in anything, invest in that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, this was great. And you know, I have tons of questions that we could probably do a second or even third interview, but we'll save that for another time. You know, I just want to thank you for your time and doing this, because, you know, I've written books, and I've gone the avenue of self-publishing, you know, and had I gone to a publisher that was your caliber from the very get-go, I probably would have, you know, overcome some of the stumbling blocks that I took on myself, you know. And you know, you've done more, I think, to help authors than most publishing houses would. I mean, you take the extra time, the extra steps. You know, you're a little stern, but I think that's necessary in today's world, because there's a lot of authors that just they need that hand holding, they need that extra attention, and you're there to give it to them. And if they don't want it, or they're not willing to accept it, then they have no business being there. So I think that, you know, you're teaching a very valuable lesson, not only to, you know, people coming in, but to entrepreneurs everywhere, that it has to be a right fit. If it's not a right fit, it's going to cost you too much time and energy.
I agree.
You know, and you have to, you know, get a good editor. I mean, you know, for one of my books, I sent it out to an editor, and because we have a conversation and I write in a conversational style, he didn't even pick it up. And I'm like, and then it was out there, you know. So, you know, I think that you're doing a lot of wonderful things. And, you know, I look forward to seeing you again at Lexicon. And, you know, it just, for those out there who don't know what Lexicon is, it's an authors conference in Denton, Texas. And it's just a wonderful event that you can meet, you know, publishers and other authors, and come together to maybe learn some marketing ideas, or some social media tips, or blogging, or you know, there's just a lot of different information there that can be shared. So with that, again, Amanda, thank you. And hopefully we can do this again, and maybe we can do it directly from Lexicon, where we have a group of people and speak from different points of view. But you know, this was great, and I'm glad that you were able to overcome your technology fears and get
Matt does that for me now. He's really good.
get Google to work, because I think it's going to be something that you'll want to be able to use in the future as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So
have a great day.